yesterday in Tuscaloosa. The Board of Trustees met. Some of these we knew about, some details a little bit more. I didn't really know Greg Byrne had agreed to a contract, but the athletic director, who probably was flirted with by Texas A&M, gets a new 8-year deal, paying him about $2 million a year. So good for Greg Byrne. Nate Oats signed his contract yesterday. He's got an $18 million buyout. We'll get into that. And we got details on Kalen Deboer's contract. All of those are signed, locked in, and ready to roll now. You guys, which one do you want to start with? You want to go Nate?
Yeah,
you want to go Kalen or Byrne?
No, because we already knew Kalen's number at $10 million, so none of that surprises me. The one I want to talk about, because I think it's a little more topical right now, is the $18 million buyout for Nate Oats.
That's right. I do have a point on Kalen's contract when we get to that.
We're gonna get to
I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, so Nate Oats, because, and Greg Burns said this on this show, is, it's important to note that not only did the University of Alabama make a commitment to Nate Oats, this is in the previous contract, when he had won the SEC and was the overall 1 seed. Not only did Alabama make a significant commitment to Nate Oats, he goes, I think it needs to be pointed out, Nate Oats made a significant commitment to Alabama with his buyout. And you don't see a whole lot of coaches do that. I think most coaches' goal is highest salary versus lowest buyout possible.
That's right. More on that with Kalen Deboer.
More on that with Kalen Deboer. Highest salary, lowest buyout possible, right? Mm-hmm. And Nate Oats has not done that. I mean, $18 million. And I know everybody's like, oh, schools have tons of money.
They're not paying that basketball.
$18 million's a lot in basketball to try to make back.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a big buyout.
The only way, we were talking about our Calcutta last night, and, UConn going for the number it went for. Really, you've got to get to a Final Four to get that number back.
Yeah.
If I'm paying $18 million on a buyout for a coach, I've got to almost be guaranteed of a national championship.
Yeah, I think people would be stunned if they realized how relatively low the amount schools will pay to buy a coach out to hire them. Not to buy a coach out to fire them. They pay massive amounts to do that. But when you go back and look historically, our agents have told us this. Our agents represent a lot of college football coaches, and that's one thing they have told us is schools just are really hesitant to pay that big of a buyout to hire a coach. And I know you're like, oh, no, it happens all the time. It really doesn't. It really does not.
Technically, the coach is on the hook for the buyout. Like Nate Oats would be on the hook for the buyout, but usually when they do get paid, it's the other school who agrees to pay the coach his buyout.
But they don't pay $18 million, especially for a basketball coach.
And that is an outlandish number. I mean, I know it's the largest right now in college basketball, but what has been the previous record for a buyout in collge basketball?
I don't know.
I would imagine that could be it.
I mean, that is it, I think. But I don't think it's close.
If you're a Bama fan, you breathe extremely easy there.
Because, for the next few years. Yeah, it does go way down.
It does. This one did too. I mean, that's one reason he's getting an extension, because these jobs came open about the time his current buyout dropped. And I think if you're an Alabama fan, you look at this, because one thing that has always worried you, I think, is the Michigan State job. And if you're an Alabama fan, Michigan State is not paying $18 million to hire Nate. If Tom Izzo says, "Hey, this is my last lap, guys," last lap for me, they ain't paying $18 million.
And I think that job's lost some luster. By the way,
I agree with you.
I do too. I would almost take Michigan over Michigan State.
I would take Michigan over Michigan State.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they're not going to pay $18 million either.
No.
So you don't have to worry about either. Anybody named Michigan ain't paying $18 million.
Yeah.
Detroit Pistons
and
are
then
not
it goes
paying
down
$18
to
million.
what after next year? Is it down to 10? Is that what I read? Something like that, 18 to 10. I can get details coming up, but it does start dropping. By the time you get to 2027, it's down to a manageable buyout. But by then, you hope Nate's done more good things that he's rolled out another contract.
There was, does he like Tuscaloosa? I think this shows you he likes Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, Jim. It's not necessarily about the money. It's about the fact that Nate does not fight this in his contract.
That's right.
Nate Oats is like, put a big buyout in there. I'm not going. I just want to get paid. I ain't going anywhere.
And the length of this contract, by the way, is going to pay him $5 million, and by the end, $7.5 million a year. More money than Nick Saban made when he first started coaching in Tuscaloosa.
And I do think that Nate Oats is going to do something that no other Alabama head coach has done in basketball, and I think he's going to get them to a Final Four one year.
Yeah,
I do.
I would
imagine they've said that about Rick Barnes several times and Matt Painter along the way. Mark Few's got him there. I think he will too.
Yeah, I mean,
I've got friends who think it's this team that will get them there only because
the draw
of the draw.
I mean, it wouldn't blow me away.
Back to the Calcutta, I cannot believe how cheap Alabama went for, and I guess the lasting impression is how they're playing right now.
Tell people what the Calcutta is. I don't think we brought it up.
Oh yeah,
on
so Calcutta is I hosted this event last night. A bunch of people come out and they pay for all the 68 teams, and There's different ways you make your money.
Yeah.
But Alabama was one of those that, if you get to the Final Four as a 4 seed, that pays out a lot. And there's just not a lot of belief in this Alabama team. But based on the draw, I think Alabama's got an opportunity to make some noise in this tournament. Do I have the balls to actually have them going in like the Elite Eight when we're actually battling for supremacy in the bracket challenge? I don't know. I hadn't gotten there yet.
This is the kind of team that could be in Arizona, or they could lose to College of Charleston. Do they call them College of Charleston still?
I think
or
it's
am I
just
being
Charleston now.
Is it just Charleston?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were College of Charleston when they were Jack State's conference when I was at school.
Showing my age, they're calling them College of Charleston.
Bobby Crimmins for a minute, right?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, there was a guy, their legendary coach was a guy named John Cressy. Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he was the coach when I was in school at Jack State, and he was fascinating to watch. That guy could flat coach.
So Mississippi A&M doesn't start the tournament against Michigan State on Thursday?
My dad for years when I was a kid, who's Alabama play this weekend? Who's Auburn play this weekend? Mississippi Southern. My dad would call them Mississippi Southern.
Mississippi Southern.
Yeah.
Instead of Southern Miss.
Instead of Southern Miss, yeah.
And Mississippi State used to be Mississippi A&M,
A&M.
I think, way back in the day. Never in my lifetime. All right, so that's the Nate Oats contract. Greg Burns got one as well. By the way, if you're just keeping up with Oats, this is his 5th year going into the tournament again. 2 Sweet 16s, 2 SEC regular seasons, 2 SEC tournaments. Pretty good resume already.
Third contract.
Yeah, and this is his 3rd contract. And get used to it if he keeps having top 15 recruiting classes. He's got another great one coming in next year. By the way, before we continue this, the portal opened yesterday in college basketball.
We brought that up with Steven last week when he was on the show. Like, what are we doing in college basketball?
300, right at 300. 292 names went in from midnight till when I was listening to the Field of 68 podcast last night, sitting in that parking lot at 11:35. Whenever they recorded that, 292 names went in yesterday.
I saw somebody, it was one of the college basketball guys last night. It might have been Jeff Goodman. Lance was like, just shorten it from 45 to 30 days, and you're at least in the Elite Eight when it opens.
Right,
not the first week of the tournament.
And so there is a Dalton Connect-like player that is going to be playing in this tournament that a lot of people don't know of, and he's got another year left next year, but he's playing for his dad right now. So Tucker DeVries is the kid at Drake.
I thought you were about to say Andy Kennedy adopted Yax Lindenberg.
No, this kid's 6'7", and he basically does everything. But do you stay and play for your father? You're in the NCAA tournament right now, Drake. Or I think this guy is really going to be pursued. Do you take an opportunity elsewhere? That's really tricky when you think about it.
Tough one.
Or do you fire a middling coach and hire the dad and the son?
Well, I just make him the associate head coach.
I'd just make him the head coach. I probably don't like the coach who's
having to hit
the portal on day one right now.
He's in the tournament.
The nuts and bolts on Kalen Deboer, 8-year contract, $10.9 million per is the average of the contract. He'll start out at 10, go to $11.75 million, 4th highest paid coach over that term of the contract currently in college football, behind only Dabo, Kirby, and Lincoln Riley.
I just thought some of the incentives were fun. Like, he gets $50,000 for National Coach of the Year. If you're National Coach of the Year, you've done something special, right?
I agree.
You check those other boxes, though. You probably have
the national championship, which pays him what, $875,000.
Yeah. Some of us call that almost $1 million.
He gets a skybox, which now most head coaches at this level get a skybox for them and their family.
Alabama's got a ton of them. I think Nick Saban had one.
All franchise quarterbacks work this in their deals in the NFL.
You said had one. That's interesting.
No, I think Nick Saban probably still has one.
Yeah, I think he's probably got one.
I mean, had one when he was the head coach. I would imagine Nick Saban's got anything. He's got a freaking office in the stadium.
The other thing, which we know that most of these head coaches get their membership to North River, which is a great country club, by the way. But I thought it was interesting. We're going to pay for his country club, but it said excluding his food and drinks. Do you think that guy will ever pay for food and drinks at North River?
I hope not.
That's what kills you, by the way, when you're a club member, because you go in and you're like, not just using a random number here, everyone. Put it on 135. At the end of the month, you get that bill and like,
the Underhills.
Yeah.
So the other thing in this, it was a stipend for a phone. Our university is starting to say, we don't want to use a university phone. Like, we don't know what's going to go on, but we don't want anything to do with it. We're going to give you a couple $100. You get with T-Mobile and you figure it out.
Here's our phone.
Yeah.
And you get the other phone.
Don't even plug this one in.
Those were interesting there. But, on the buyout, his buyout is
$5 million,
$5 million, $4 million, $3 million. And then from 2027 to 31 is 0.
Now, that's the buyout if he's being hired.
Yeah,
that's not the buyout
yeah.
to fire him.
No.
He gets
his contract is virtually guaranteed.
That is right.
Yeah,
That's
without
it.
calls, 90% of the contract is guaranteed. But $5 million that's a minimal number. That is
it's nothing.
Back to Oats and the $18 million. Schools in basketball aren't going to pay that. Schools would pay $5 million.
Yeah, so if Kalen Deboer doesn't like it here, he can leave, no problem.
But the gamble here's the gamble on that, okay? So I'll play both sides of the street. For Deboer, I'm going to have to renegotiate this. Jimmy Sexton's going to have to renegotiate this contract for me at some point. If I've got a massive buyout like Oats does, it's hard to leverage one job against another. Nick Saban did that with the Texas job, right? It's hard to leverage one job against another if it's a big, massive buyout. If you're on Alabama's side, you're like, yeah, but it's going to be hard for him to sell us he's taken any job other than Alabama. I mean, what other job is he going to sell us he's taken?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, y'all give me a job that if it were open and Deboer could go to Greg Byrne and say, hey, by the way, I got an offer from.
Well, I think the only
there might be four.
I think the reason this was worked out, obviously, it benefits Kalen Deboer a lot more. But I think Jimmy Sexton probably said, "Look, this is a tough job. I mean, you are following the best to ever do this. This people say it might not be a cultural fit. We think it is. Obviously, you guys think it is. But if it isn't."
Yeah.
But I'm just saying,
if he gets fired instantly, he's going to walk away somewhere close to $70 million to $80 million. Never work again. It's generational wealth.
That's right. And
for taking this gamble in his life.
But again, I mean, it's going to be hard for Kalen Deboer to walk in Greg Byrne's office and tell him he's taking any other job to try to leverage A against B, or Jimmy Sexton to walk in. So if you're Alabama, you're like, yeah, we'll give you a low buyout. It's probably never going to matter. I mean, I know we're going to give you new contracts, but we're also not going to get held over the barrel because there might be two jobs you could convince us you would actually leave Alabama to take, one of those two jobs.
Yeah. So interested today in contracts, and my biggest takeaway is that the football coach at Alabama has a $5 million buyout. The basketball coach at Alabama has an $18 million buyout.
Yeah, I remember doing radio forever ago when it was such a massive deal that Mark Godfrey was making more than Mike Shula.
Yeah. And it was only like $100,000 more, but I think Godfrey was over $1 million and Shula was not.
But right now, Nate Oats is such a hot commodity on other job list that the buyout's at $18 million.
But the other side of that is there are far more jobs you would leave Alabama basketball for
that's my
than you would
point.
leave Alabama
Yeah,
football
that's my point.
for.
Yeah,
But
I'm just saying,
and he's doing such a good job that those schools have interest in him.
Yeah, but you don't have to protect yourself near as much on the football coach.
But you guys would give me, Alabama fans right now believe Nate Oats is more important to the program than Kalen Deboer is.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Lance, I'm going to have to think on that.
Well, the only reason
too.
I say that because what is the approval rating from Nate Oats? I mean, right now with Alabama fans,
Pretty high.
Pretty high.
DeBoer hasn't coached a game.
But I'm just saying, DeBoer when he was hired, there were some people clapping back.